Our Jewish tradition has a complex relationship with the past. We look back on our people's history, sometimes with sadness and mourning, sometimes with veneration, but almost always with an eye for learning about what our future could be. Our Torah portion this week says about our past, referring specifically to our time in Egypt. In Hebrew, the word Mitzrayim, that's the word for Egypt. You must not go back that way again, the Torah warns. Some of our sages have understood this idea to mean not returning to Egypt as being a physical commandment. Our ancestors, even as late as the medieval period, understood this to mean geographically, do not go back to Egypt, don't live there. Others saw this as a behavioral warning. We were not to behave as the Egyptians were behaving. In the context of the Torah portion itself, both of these readings are completely legitimate. In my Torah studies this week, I found this short verse to have also a spiritual component as well. We have a beautiful reflection in our prayer book related to the Michamocha that we often read or sing in our Shabbat evening services together, and it says, you may remember, standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt. Egypt is a physical place, perhaps a practical set of cultural norms, but it is also a spiritual place, a place of narrowness, the actual meaning of the Hebrew word Mitzrayim, a place of helplessness, a place of limited horizons, and labor that is demeaning rather than invigorating. Mitzrayim, Egypt, is not necessarily a place of complete physical destruction. It wasn't always for our people either, but it is a place of spiritual poverty. That is a place we must never go again, our Torah says, and throughout our individual and communal lives, there are many Mitzrayim places for us to find. As our local and global Jewish community grapples with this Iran deal, we are faced with what is potentially a return to Mitzrayim, a narrow and hopeless place. This is a very challenging moment for our people, a moment infused with passion and concern and fear and confusion, and from a place of love and a sincere desire to see the world change for the better, we are faced with a disagreement in our community. How we engage in this disagreement, will define us. It will determine the length of our sojourn in Egypt. To put it in more personal terms, imagine a family conversation surrounding the medical treatment of an ill loved one. Everyone agrees that the status quo cannot continue in that situation. Everyone agrees that something must be done. There are many expert opinions to be found, second and third and fourth opinions, and those opinions do not agree with one another. And the family must make a choice. This moment is excruciatingly difficult, no matter what, and many of us have been in that exact situation in our own families. The life of our loved one hangs in the balance, and so does the future of that family. Calling someone's motives into question, accusing our sister or brother or parent of having less love for the person who is ill than we do, can tear a family apart. When this happens, the treatment remains uncertain, as it might have otherwise, but so too does the family relationship. It may never recover from this moment. What a terrifyingly narrow place that is to be. What a Mitzrayim for that family. Our Reform movement published a response to the Iran deal this week that began with the following assertion. Whether the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action concerning Iran, is approved or defeated, there will be a day after. It is essential that this debate not be allowed to create a lasting rift between Israel and the U.S., between North American Jews and Israelis, and among American Jews themselves. Some of us may have a strongly held opinion about this deal. Others may not yet have come to one. But we have a family to hold together as well. That's why we care so very much. So how do we do that? In the face of this difficult situation, our liturgy says, before we pray silently, perhaps words that you just read, Elohai nitzor lishoni me'ra usfatai medaber mirma. Guard our tongues from evil and our lips from speaking falsehood. It is a plea for care and principle in our speech. We read it every week. Rabbi Greenstein and I are performing a wedding tomorrow night, and at the end of it, at the end of all Jewish weddings, the groom will shatter a glass. That sound has many meanings, as you may know. Yes, it reminds us of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in our history, but it also is meant to remind us that sacred things are easily shattered. And once shattered, they are all but impossible to put back together. On the day after, what will remain of the whole? We must remember that this theme, taking great precaution not to let our rhetoric destroy what we're fighting for, this theme is recurrent in our tradition. Can we live up to this during this heated national, political, public, and familial discussion so that we won't have breached something so badly that we can't repair it the day after? Another Mitzrayim moment to consider, related to Tisha B'Av and our remembrance of the temple's destruction that so much of the Jewish world observed only a month ago. Our ancient rabbis say a shocking thing that you may have studied before. They say that what really resulted in the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem was not an army, but sinat chinam, which means baseless hatred that Jews had for one another. It turns out that we didn't actually need much help destroying ourselves. We were very effective without an army at our gates. And as afraid as we may have been of our external enemies during that moment in history, the familial strife of our people was the most powerful force for destruction, so the rabbis teach. Our Torah portion urges us, don't go back there. This high holiday season that is almost upon us says, it is easy to lose your way and leave the path of righteousness. That's why we have Yom Kippur year after year after year. The deep spiritual message of this season is that only by returning to that path, can we move forward. The profound irony of the Jewish point of view. So let's go back there and find that high road. And it is the belief of our tradition that that is the path to the promised land. Shabbat shalom.